Shakespeare.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Is there anything about the story of the Tempest specifically that appeals to you?
Well, I know, it's a storm, and also it's human emotions that also could be the tempest of a storm, and so I'm interested how they portray it.
What if I told you that the Tempest is based upon true events?
Oh, I'd believe it. I'd believe it because it's a prince and all that stuff, yeah.
Okay. And what if I told you that one of the characters' descendants ended up on the outer cape?
Wonderful.
Are you familiar with the story of the Tempest?
In high school, I played Ariel. A long time ago.
And were you aware that the Tempest was actually inspired by a true story?
No. Tell me about this. I have no idea.
Well, what if I told you that one of the characters' descendants live on the outer cape?
Oh my goodness. And the character's like
Stephano, the drunken butler.
No, I had no idea there was that connection.
That if we told you that this magical play was actually based in reality, what's your reaction to that?
I find that actually very surprising.
Okay, and what if I told you that some of the descendants of one of the characters there actually populates the outer cape?
And that is even more surprising. As you know, you have to take such a huge kind of leap of faith to accept the fact that the supernatural tale is based in some degree in reality, and then to think that, a story that's nearly 500 years old, that there's still a connection to today is mind-blowing.
Do you think audiences would be interested in learning more about the true story behind this?
I do, actually. I think just some of the sheer novelty of it is fascinating. It's almost mind-blowing to think that there is a reality to this story.
First, could you state your name?
Scott Atwood is my name.
Okay, and Scott, what do you do here at Plymouth Plantation?
Well, I'm one of the colonial interpreters to interpret the story of the pilgrims and natives around them. But I did portray Stephen Hopkins for about 10 years.
What was different about Hopkins as compared to all the other characters in Plymouth?
Well, he had been in the New World before any of them. He had been on a venture going into Virginia in 1609 and had the, misfortune as it seemed, to be shipwrecked in Bermuda. There's a great deal that's not known about any of these pilgrims, and yet we're constantly looking for more. Stephen Hopkins, as one of my favorites, if you know something about him, I want to know.
What's in here?
Oh, let's find out. Whoa!
This is great.
So what do you want to do with the space?
Last December, we got a $10,000 pre-production grant from Mass Humanities to tell the story of Stephano. That's the true story of Shakespeare's shipwreck. That was seed money to get us started, telling a 1-hour documentary filmed here at the Cape Cod Community Media Center and as a joint production with Rhode Island PBS. I was raised with the story in my family that Stephen Hopkins was the basis for Stephano, the rebellious, drunken butler in Shakespeare's final play. We want to know how much is true, and so we're leaving here and giving you a little taste of the sort of work that we do.
Well, I think that the Tempest is it's gonna open a window for you guys into the early days of the English presence in the western side of the Atlantic. This is a story that moves between art and life pretty fluidly in different artistic venues and different historical venues.
I don't know about Hopkins, if he was the same person from the Sea Venture to the Mayflower. If it is, that's a fascinating tale to tell. because it is also a story of survival and replantation. It tells the story anew from failure to success.
And Stephen Hopkins was the only passenger on board the Mayflower who'd ever been to the New World before. Is this a story that you think that people in the theater would want to know more about?
Absolutely. I'm very fascinated by this already.
Okay.
I think it's really interesting. I would have loved to have had this information going into the part.
When the other Native Americans originally come to Plymouth, they're staying over at Stephen Hopkins' house.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. Well, it might be that he was their designated Indian expert. I've speculated about that because of his experience here in Virginia.
And that was the infamous starving time winter for Virginia. The Indians laid siege to the fort, didn't allow people to get out and hunt or gather like they could have. And so from about 350 people who started that winter, there were about 60 left in the fort when the ships came from Bermuda in 1610. So that winter was infamously awful. People were eating whatever they could in the fort, and there were a couple of instances, documented instances of cannibalism.
I think for those of us in Bermuda, it would be good just to see how much we are connected with the rest of the Atlantic world through this particular individual. People are excited about the fact that there was a man who was both on the Sea Finch as well as the Mayflower, and this sort of association that Bermuda plays a larger role in the Atlantic world.
Well, I'm an actor based in New York here, and I just played Stephano down at the Shakespeare Theater. One thing that they seem to share is that they arrive on this island and they kind of make the best of what they've got there. Trinculo comes out and he's like, "Where's all the shelter? How do I hide from the storm?" And Stephano's like, "Well, I'm going to get drunk and I'm going to die here."
It's also important to tell the story of the people he came in contact with. So while we're connecting Stephano to Stephen Hopkins, we're looking at the background of Shakespeare's Caliban, the monstrous native of this island who could have been inspired by people like Squanto, Ipanau, or any number of Native Americans who were captive in England and managed to find their way home.
I think knowing whether or not Caliban was based on a real person is really, really important information, just insofar as I think that he gives the character a lot of humanity that I think is really interesting given the time period.
Pocahontas, Shakespeare, Squanto, Massasoit, Stephen Hopkins touched all of these lives, and he's a great way to be able to tell a story about the dawn of America.
This is great. I think I sort of love this segue of sort of taking, sort of bits of history and integrating them into sort of other disciplines and how that's coming out, So, I never thought I'd be talking about the Tempest in this context, but it's pretty cool.
How do you think he would have been viewed by the Wampanoag Society?
I think it probably would have made it a bit easier for him, because if he was less constrained by the rules and the protocol and all of that, that certainly would have enabled him to be received better.
This is a great story that wraps up history and Shakespeare's final play together, and not only gets history people interested in theater and theater people interested in history, but engages new audiences who might be interested in both. So please go to hitandrunhistory.com/Shakespeare and contribute today. Thank you.
My name's Chris Johnston. I played Stephano, and I want to know who Stephen Hopkins is.